Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our workshop on how to apply for the Provost Grant. We are thrilled to have you here today as we guide you through the process of applying for the Provost Grant, a prestigious opportunity for PhD students. I'm Lina Safa. I'm the manager for the Center for Global Partnerships and Learning here at Pepperdine GSCP. And I am joined today by three incredible scholars who have a wealth of research experience and professional expertise. Dr. Suelen Schneider-Demaria, a specialist in business strategy, supply chain, and leadership. She earned her PhD in global leadership and change from Pepperdine GSCP in 2024. And she has served as a graduate assistant at the center also, and is currently a faculty member at Pepperdine as part of the prestigious Pepper Postdoctoral Fellowship for 2024-2025. Dr. Liane Weintraub, who also earned her PhD in Global Leadership and Change from Pepperdine GSCP in 2024. She is a commissioner, a dedicated volunteer, and the founder of a nonprofit organization that empowers communities through leadership. And we have Dr. Karin Moore, a technology leader with a focus on attracting and promoting women and girls in STEM. She holds a PhD in Global Leadership and Change from Pepperdine and is also a Pepper Fellow, where she continues her research and teaching. Dr. Moore also has launched her consulting business in this area recently. And lastly, I would like to acknowledge our center's director, Dr. Gabriela Miramontes, who is not with us today, but always with us whenever she's not present, and whose support really is instrumental in making workshops like this possible. Each of these doctors bring really extensive research and professional experience, and while this brief introduction doesn't do justice to their backgrounds, you will get to hear more about their work and insights throughout today's session. A quick overview of the structure for today's workshop. We've divided the session into 4 key parts. First part will be just an overview. Then Dr. Liane Weintraub will discuss grant funding in scholarship and practice and explain how the Provost Grant is a unique opportunity. And then Dr. Suelen Schneider-Demaria will lead us through ideation, presentation, and practice, offering practical strategies to shape your research ideas into strong proposals. Then Dr. Weintraub will return to walk you through your grant proposal, project description, helping you craft a compelling narrative for your research. And finally, Dr. Karin Moore will cover the process, timeline, budget, and mentorship, providing critical guidance on building a feasible research plan and securing mentorship. We have actually reserved time for a Q&A session at the end of our presentations. So in the interest of time, we kindly ask you to hold all your questions until the end. But if anything comes up that cannot wait, please feel free to write your question in the chat and we will address it as we go. Okay, let's take a quick look into the general requirements for the Provost Grant. So to be eligible, you must be, of course, a current PhD student at Pepperdine University. And if you are applying as part of a research group, you can include up to 3 members, but the first author will act as the primary contact person for the group, sorry. So also keep in mind that a student can appear in no more than 2 proposals during each funding round. And since funding is limited, priority may be given to those who have not received these program funds before. In terms of the application and what it should include, you will need first to fill out the official grant application form for sure. Along with that, you will submit a project description, which is typically 3 to 5 pages, outlining your research objectives and methodologies. A detailed budget is also a key component, and this should break down your research expenses in an itemized format. So it's important also to remember that the funds cannot be used for equipment purchases, student stipends, or to cover living expenses for researchers. And finally, a letter of support from your faculty mentor is required to provide institutional backing, of course, for your proposal. In terms of submission deadline, review criteria, and some important dates, applications must be submitted by October 31, 2024, which is around the corner. And if you are awarded actually the grant, the funds must be used by July 15, 2025. And once submitted, applications will be evaluated based on three main criteria: the feasibility of your project's timeline and budget, the overall contribution your research will make to your academic field, and the strength of your faculty mentor's letter of support. And it's also important to note that if you do receive the grant, a brief progress report on your project will be due by August 15, 2025. And as always, if you have any questions at any stage of the process, always reach out to Savannah Hanan. I hope I pronounce her name right. She is the coordinator for internal grants. And I'll pass it now over to Dr. Liane Weintraub, who will talk about grant funding and scholarship and practice and why the Provost Grant is such a unique opportunity. Dr. Weintraub, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Lina. Much appreciated. Um, yeah, I think that a good place for us to start is just to think about where grant funding and this sort of activity falls within scholarship and practice. And as scholars and practitioners, seeking research funding is really not merely just a matter of securing resources. I mean, that's nice, but it's an essential part, really, of scholarly life that supports the foundation of the work we do. And securing grants is both a practical necessity and a strategic practice. So when we're pursuing funding, we are doing more than just acquiring financial support. We're affirming the value of our research in the broader academic and societal conversation. And funding is really the catalyst that enables us to do things like conducting rigorous studies, exploring new methodologies, and extending the reach of our work. It's what allows us to transform a great idea into a really tangible, impactful project. And funding really connects the two pillars of research and dissemination. Securing a grant is often what provides the structure and resources that's needed to carry out our research, but it also affords us the ability to share our findings with a wider audience. And this process of dissemination, whether it's through academic conferences or peer-reviewed publications or community engagement, and many of you may have already participated in those types of activities, is what ultimately broadens the impact of our work past the walls of Pepperdine. And at the end of the day, each of us decided to pursue a PhD to foster academic discourse, but also to affect real world change. And that's what this helps to do. So I want to contextualize this workshop and pursuing grants overall, not just as an administrative task or a means to an end, but really as an integral part of the research process that creates this cycle of inquiry and discovery and contribution to the larger body of knowledge. And applying for grants like the Provost Grant, we're not just seeking the financial support, we're positioning ourselves as active contributors to our respective fields. So why is this grant a unique opportunity? First, it's exclusively open to Pepperdine PhD students. So as applicants, you're not going to be competing with this broad external pool of scholars that you generally would be for grants. That really allows you to focus on how your proposal aligns with Pepperdine's values and goals, which presumably you already share some of because you're all students here. And then next, this grant comes with a degree of support and guidance. This workshop, for example, it's a perfect example of that. And honestly, it's fairly rare compared to national or international grants where you're going to be really navigating the application process independently with no one holding your hand. Not that we're holding your hand, but we're helping serve as guides. Um, and then it's also important to note that very few funding opportunities are tailored the way this one is, specifically for early stage scholars. So while the funding committee is looking for high quality applications, this grant is designed to provide students with an initial resource to sort of launch their research. And hopefully that will lay a foundation for future work and more competitive grants down the line. And then finally, one of the great advantages is how streamlined the application is. By only asking for a 3 to 5 page proposal, this is a really straightforward path to funding, especially compared to more exhaustive applications that you'll run into with other funding opportunities. This is a very manageable application, even with the demands of coursework and your other commitments. I think it's doable. Actually, I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be keeping the proposal to only 5 pages, but we will get to that a little bit later. So when the three of us, myself and Suelen and Karin, were prepping for this workshop, we realized that we all three of us took very different approaches to getting our own provost grants. And so that with that, we can offer all of you kind of three unique perspectives that we wanted to share, along with just a little bit about our areas of interest. So I'll start us off. My area of focus is on the problem of polarization and the breakdown in civil discourse in America, and especially among Gen Z. So that was my dissertation topic. And as I was working on it, even before I finished my dissertation, I knew that I would want to replicate my study. I already had IRB approval for it. So the grant proposal that I developed, that I submitted, laid out my rationale for replicating and building out that research. Suelen and Karin had very different proposals and different approaches, so I'm going to let them share those. Suelen, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Liane. Uh, Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here and share a little bit of our experience. So my experience with the Provost grant is back from 2021 and 2022. My approach was much more a group approach. So we went twice and we were awarded twice grant for two different projects. So our first project was in 2021, and we conducted a study on global virtual team leaders in the US and in the Brazil. We had a lot of publications from those two studies. It was a phenomenological study. And we were kind of inspired by one of our projects in the 700s. So we created our project based on that. And the second one was a quantitative study inspired by one of our quantitative courses. And we analyzed individual work performance, considering some conditions such as the work model, remote versus in-person work. So basically, two very different projects, still connected to the virtual leadership approach, and both group projects. Nowadays, I'm still working on virtual leadership, but I took an approach to leadership in different ways. I've been working and studying trust, the role of trust in the leadership in the leadership practice. It was the topic of my dissertation, but I'm still interested in virtual leadership if you need some guidance or something like that. With that, I pass it to you, Karin. Thank you.
Sounds good. Hi, everybody. As Dr. Safa mentioned, I went through this STEM journey after doing a lot of STEM work. And what I wanted to do was dip my toe into the research that was going to be my PhD research and eventually could build on. So I took a relatively safe topic, if you will, in STEM graduate school motivations for women and why STEM women choose to go to graduate school. But it was really at the foray into what was going to later be my part of my PhD actual thesis. And I did this twice. The first time I went through and had a survey, and then I coded the survey, and I took all of the research tools that I had been learning and created basically research outcomes from why women choose to go to graduate school who are STEM women. The next year, I came upon a data set and I wanted to build on that work from the prior year and make it more of a study of a 14,000 row with 40 different columns data set. And both were approved, which I'm very grateful for. So when it's my turn to speak, I'll tell you a little bit more about these. But again, any and all ideas, as you can see the cross section of the three of us, we're not awarded because of anything that is, a running line through them. It's just that they have to have merit. They have to stand on their own. So back to you, Liane.
Actually, I think we're going to go back to Suelen.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So let's continue our conversation a little bit and what I want to share with you. So one of the things when we were discussing about this workshop is we need to start with a clear vision of what is it that we wanted to accomplish with our research, right? As Karin just said, it must be something that is, it can hold itself as a research. So this is the foundation of having a good quality research is start with your idea, your ideation. What is it that you want to really accomplish? What I prepare for you today is 6 simple steps for ideation of a research project topic. When you study ideation, there are several topics, but it would be overwhelming. So I decided to focus on the most important ones and the ones that I really believe will help you in this journey. So the process of ideation will help you both to come up with your topic of interest or also kind of refine your topic of interest if you already have your topic of interest decided. The first step is really identify your interest. So in this step, we answer the question, what is it that we want to study? What is it that you want to study? Is it something that you are passionate about? Is that something that you are already, researching on an assignment or something like that? Consider the several topics and possibilities that you can do. And then I encourage you to do some brainstorming and, come up with a list and then start to narrow down by relevance, by something that is an important problem that you wanted to solve or something like that. Because when you are creating your research proposal, you needed to show the relevance of it. So it really needs to be something relevant and something that will contribute to the academia, to the field of work you were doing, and so on. So once you have that topic kind of decide, it's time for the next step that is about the literature, the preliminary research. It's a very important question. Is there literature out there that you can support your research? And the answer is almost every time you research for some topic, you will find something out there. So explore the existing literature frameworks. What are the gaps? Gaps are important because gaps will inform, okay, we have this literature that can be used to, support my study, but there are also space for more. The gaps that we will be able to fulfill with your new research. And it brings relevance. Can you go to the next slide, please, Lina? Then the third step is assess the feasibility of your research. Is it feasible considering the time frame for the grant? So if you describe your proposal, apply today, and you receive the award, can you accomplish everything that you plan to do during the period of time that the grant is being executed? It means August next year. This is an important thing for you to decide, because if you go on a very complex program, maybe you go over that deadline. So it is something that you can use to narrow down your ideas. The fourth is, what is the problem statement and research question that you wanted to address? I would say that the research question is the most important thing that you needed to think when you were conducting any research. This will guide the way you will structure your research, the methodology, design, and also the literature that you wanted to support that. So once you have all these, you go to something that I find really important. You have your idea, you have your problem, you have some knowledge about the literature, you know that it is feasible. Then this step is very important. Take this package, this small package, and share with peers or mentors, other people to get some constructive criticism. That's really important. And at Pepperdine, we have very helpful faculty members who are there to support us. Karin will talk more about mentor, but all of us during our journey as a PhD students, I would say that I can't complain because I always received help from faculty from different areas. Virtual learning or leadership or qualitative or quantitative methodology. So we really have a strong community, and this is something that I would do if I were you, and this is very important for any research. And finally, you will revise it with your feedback, and then you are ready to write your winning project. And Liane will describe a little bit more about that. So here are some strategies using assignments that I want to share with you. And why is that? Because doctoral students can really leverage various assignments and projects to generate ideas and new research. So use your time wisely. If you have already, a topic that you were going from now to your dissertation, that's good. But also take advantage of the assignments that you were doing during your classes to, publish something, to get your voice out there. We'll have a workshop on November 7 about that. But here are some strategies or some ideas on how you can do that. So you can have, during your coursework, you will have several papers that are based on literature review. So you can use those papers to write your research proposal. Another one is using group research projects. So the 700, or I see a couple of students here from our 724. We have a case study that we are conducting there. This is another one that you can use for your research. You can use reflection papers. You can use presentations that you do for seminar, symposium, conference presentations. For example, GSEP symposium, the only thing they require is an abstract. And the IOSSBR is also an abstract. So those are good examples. You can take the idea from those seminars, conferences, and you can transform in a proposal to go more in deep on your research around that topic. You can use quantitative research assignment. I just cite one of our projects was from quantitative assignment with Dr. Dudley. And Liane is going to teach grant writing, right? So you also do a lot of exercise that, and you can use those assignments for your benefit. Next slide, please. So I have a short practice to do with you before I turn it to Liane. This is a very short practice, but I want us all to reflect a little bit about the first 3 steps for ideation. So the first thing is, I would like you all to take a few minutes to reflect on your research interests and possible topics. So please take like 2-3 minutes to write down some of your topics of interest. And the other question is there any assignment that you can use in this process of ideation? Let's take 3 minutes to reflect on that. So I imagine that you will finalize your list. So next, think about the literature. Is there any theoretical lens framework that you could use to support this idea? And the last question is it feasible in terms of time, resources, and also the data that you have to collect? Is there out there enough data, or can you collect the data in time? Think about the Provost Grant timeline. Consider that you have to send your report about your execution and how you use the funds until August next year. Okay, so now that you have some time to think about your ideas, your topics of interest, the theoretical framework, and the feasibility of the project, I would like to invite one or two people who would like to share the idea and tell us what it is and such. And we can take this moment to practice the share and get feedback about your topic. So is anyone willing to share? You can just unmute yourself or raise your hand.
I can do
Okay, Zoe, yeah, go ahead.
it. Okay, so mine is biomedical gaslighting and how it affects autonomy. That's what it is. The JAMA and the sociology pubs as well as PubMed are really good for that. So is it feasible? Definitely, because I'm passionate about it.
That's great. And this is the first time you start to narrow it down, or do you have already thought about that and you already have like a research question or something like that?
Yeah, this is something I'm working on in the ethics class. It's a new project. I just finished a proposal on it and got an A on it. So I'm like, yay. So I found 20 articles that are relevant, both disagree and actually it's interesting. The articles led me to ask a second research question, which is a good thing, I think. But I'm very excited about because I've experienced things like that as a veteran in healthcare, as a woman veteran. Oh yeah, I'm ready for this.
That's great. And what would be the methodology you were going to use?
It would definitely be I've never pronounced that right. The qualitative phenomenal technology one. I would definitely, just as a preliminary answer, that's what it would be. I would ideally like to assess both, say here in, I'm in San Diego, so Sharp Memorial private sector, as well as the veteran women, because every so often I have conversations, it's a hidden topic for veteran women that needs to, I want to really bring it out there. So all of that, because it's different, but it's important. So I personally want to make a difference on legislation for women's health care. That's why I'm here at Pepperdine.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's really great. Great
Thank
job, Zoe. So it seems like you have a great topic. You know what you were talking about. You have been researching about that. And you might be ready to write your winning proposal. What I would recommend for you, considering you are doing a phenomenology, is in your timeline, consider that you have to get the approval from IRB as soon as possible. So do you have a faculty sponsor?
Not yet. This has only been the 6 week of class, but I think I can find one.
Yeah, so this is very important because this faculty sponsor will also help you with the IRB process. Also, if you reach out to the Center for Global Partnerships and Learning, they can also support you with some information about research. Dr. Gabby does that very well as well. So if you want, just reach out to Lina, Dr. Gabby, and I also can help you with our experience with IRB as well. So feel free to do that. And that's a really important step because sometimes if you do that right, you get approved in just, few days, weeks, or if you take the harder route, it will take like months, and then your timeline will be a little bit more difficult. But congratulations, you have a good start.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll email you.
And I see also, thank you so much, Zoe. Thank you. And just like Suelen said, whenever you need assistance, please do reach out to us, and we're always here to help. I saw Kimberly's hand up, Suelen, so if we can just ask Kimberly to...
Hey,
Yeah.
Kimberly, how are you?
Hi, thank you. And thank you all for sacrificing and giving us your time today for this wonderful workshop. It truly means a lot. For my topic, I know I'm not ready, but but at least I'm starting in the beginning. I have a really extreme interest in, of course, leadership and emotional intelligence and decision making. But I'm so broad to where I need to really narrow that one down. And so that topic I'm going to also use for my qualitative class as well, and for one of the other classes that I have. But so I know that I won't be prepared by this deadline, but I'm still trying to get it together in my mind how to get that narrowed down.
Yeah, that's great area of study, emotional intelligence and the connection with the leadership. I think your dissertation was also connected to emotional intelligence, right, Karin? No? Okay, sorry.
No. Maybe I should go back. No, I mean, yeah, STEM, all STEM.
Yeah, no problem.
I've done a bunch of research
Oh,
on
okay, it was yours. So yeah,
not
great.
so much my dissertation, but other stuff. But I was just typing in the chat, Kimberly. Don't be so sure you won't make it to the deadline. We're talking about 3 to 5 pages. We're not talking about a fully fleshed out. I mean, I'll get into the nitty gritty after Suelen concludes this portion, but 3 to 5 pages. I don't know. Don't discount it. Hang out for the rest of the workshop, and maybe you'll be able to pull something off.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
I would also offer another word of advice. So you have this broad, area of study that you wanted to tackle. So maybe you can study leaders in a specific area, or you can just do a literature review on, because the literature, emotional intelligence is something that you wanted to continue studying, your proposal can be attached to existing literature, existing study, and you can systematically review those studies. So you can decide in a field like, let's say, in leaders in healthcare during the pandemic period. I'm just, guessing here. So try to define a field, a specific kind of population, or something like that. And then you can create this proposal that is connected to your interest. So I echo what Liane said. Don't give up just now, because it's not that difficult, and you can work it smarter, like, based on existing literature. You don't even need to interview people in some of, depending on the methodology you decide. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yes, that is definitely very encouraging. So in essence, it could even be like part of extension theory too. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm starting to feel much better. Thank you.
The only part I would say is that because this is a grant and there's a financial component to it, and your time is not an option for compensation for this grant, think about how you might use money, because that's part of what this is. But, even if what you're planning to do as a research study isn't extremely costly in terms of, the monies that you would submit for the grant, obtaining a grant is really, it's a prestigious thing, and it's a very useful thing to have, on your resume, on your CV, and in the future, as you go for other grants, potentially, more competitive grants out there in the world, having already secured a grant from Pepperdine is, it's going to be a big check in your column. So your time can't be compensated, but I'm sure you can think of some way to show that there's some costs associated with it that are legitimate.
Yeah, and in this sense, you can associate costs with, purchase of some materials that are not available and you can use. You can also, we have the trip award, but sometimes depending on where you were going, the expense can be, much more than what they provided to doctoral students. So you can use that as well. There are a lot of ways. You can try to use some, I know, content analysis tools that, require some stipend or some fee to purchase. You can do all that.
Okay, great.
Okay, so with that, we concluded this part of the presentation. I will pass it over to Liane, so we keep it on time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Suelen. And before we start, we go back to Liane. Liane, if you don't mind, just one moment. Kimberly, I did type also my email in the chat. You are always welcome to reach out to me and to schedule a one-on-one research meeting. I'm happy to consult with you around your research around emotional intelligence specifically, or whatever topic you're working on. So just so you know, and anyone else, I'm always welcome to schedule a one-on-one meeting. Okay.
Yes, thank you so very much. And I definitely am so blessed to have you all. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. And let's go again with Liane.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And that's exactly what I was sort of referring to as far as the hand-holding or the guidance that GSDP is offering. It's really unique. And I just encourage you guys to take advantage of Dr. Safa and everything that Pepperdine offers. So let's get into the proposal itself. And I just wanted to start kind of with, well, I'm going to focus on the project description. There's a few other things that are required, but I think that's really the core of your application. So that's where I'm going to focus my time for today. And first, I'll start with just a few tips that I think will set you up for success. The first is to focus on the why, the significance of your research, which Suelen alluded to already. It's crucial. Why is this work important? What problem are you addressing? If you're not clear on this, there's no way that it's going to come across in your proposal to the reviewers who are looking at your grant. The second is be succinct. Your project description should be really focused and well organized. Again, as I said before, 3 to 5 pages is short. You want to keep it clear, you want to keep it to the point, and remember that you want to make it easy for the reviewers to understand your research without kind of getting lost in unnecessary details that may seem super necessary to you, but you want to keep it a clear path for them. And along those same lines, you want to keep it jargon-free. So your research might be highly specialized, but when you're writing this proposal, you want to use language that is clear and that's accessible to non-experts. You're writing for a highly educated but diverse audience that may not have experience in your particular topic. So you want to avoid overly technical terms. I mean, unless you're going to define them, which of course you should define specific terms, but you don't want to be going down kind of the garden path too deep into any kind of jargon. Ensure your ideas are presented in a way that anybody can grasp. So Lina, do you mind going to the next slide? Thank you. So with those tips kind of in mind, I want to move us into the substantive components of writing a strong project description. The application, somebody is joining. Oh, Dr. Sama. So the application asks you to address 4 different topics. And the first one is the background and significance of your proposed research. And personally, I think this is really the heart of your submission. In this section, you want to lay a strong foundation for why your research matters. And I want to break that down into the key elements. So first, again, as Suelen mentioned in the ideation, you want to state your problem clearly. You want to be clear on what challenge or gap your research is going to be addressing. You want to present a well-defined problem that shows why your project is necessary. So ask yourself, what pressing issue is at stake? Why should the reader care? Zoe, you talked about that you're highly invested in your topic, but you want to translate to the reader as well, not just that you're highly invested and you're passionate about it, but why they should matter and why it matters sort of societally. So I'll relate this to my research if that's helpful for anyone. So in my research, I needed reviewers to understand what is polarization and why it's causing problems in society today. So there's a lot written about it. I may have assumed that people just automatically would grasp it because they're reading the newspaper or they're watching the news. But your proposal has to really make it clear and not make any assumptions that the reader is already on board with what is this problem and why is it relevant. I then had to relate this to civil discourse and the current state of dialogue today, societally, so broadly, and then also in academia, which is central to my study. And then I addressed Gen Z because that is my target population. I had to explain why that's my sample and how that group is central to the issue of polarization. So then next, you want to review the current knowledge, summarize the relevant literature or studies in your field that have addressed similar issues, which is showing that you're well-versed in the area and provides context for your research. However, you may already know a ton about your topic, and in 3 to 5 pages, you have to be very selective and only include the most pertinent studies to avoid getting bogged down in too many details. So for example, for me, I had already written my chapter 2 of my dissertation. So 50 plus pages literature review that went in depth into all kinds of different areas. So I really needed to give a super abridged, condensed version that just kept it, very focused for this 3 to 5 page submission. And then next, you want to highlight the gaps. What's missing from the current body of knowledge? Maybe previous studies have overlooked certain perspectives, or maybe there's a need for more empirical data. Whatever it is, you want to identify these gaps really clearly and demonstrate how your research is going to address them. And this is where you're going to show kind of the originality and the necessity of your work. So in mine, I showed that although there is a massive amount of scholarship on polarization out there, and there are many discourse theories, there's actually very little research on Gen Z in those areas or on Gen Z at all. And virtually no research on how interventions like the one I designed are working in the current polarized environment. So that was how I highlighted the gaps. And then finally, you want to emphasize your contributions. How is your project going to impact the field or broader society? If your research contributes new theories or data or practical solutions, you want to articulate all of that and its significance. If you think it will shift thinking, scholarship on your topic, or inform policy, or whatever it is, create new avenues for research, you want to address that. So in my proposal, because I was proposing to replicate a study I had already done, I offered a few potential contributions, such as, for one, it was a way that I could address some of the limitations of my study. One of them being sample size. So by replicating the study, I essentially doubled the size of the sample, doubled the size of the number of participants who had been subjected to the same intervention. So, and then also it would allow me to compare my new data with my original findings and kind of do a compare contrast and see whether the passage of time made any difference. So when you kind of put all of those elements together, it really forms a compelling argument for the background and the significance of your research and why it would be worth funding. So let's go into the next slide, if you don't mind. And I'm going to spend a little less time on these three parts of the project description, just so we have time for a little practice. So the third requirement is to explain the investigator context. In this section, you want to start by explaining the value of your project in terms of how it advances your own research goals. Show how this particular study fits into the broader trajectory of your work. So you've already explained its value to the field and society, but now it's sort of your chance to talk about your lens and how will this project help you achieve something academically or professionally or whatever. Next, you want to emphasize your personal connection. You want to tie the project to your academic journey, what drives your interest in the topic. Is this a longstanding area of curiosity, or is it like a new development? It's your chance to kind of give the reviewers a sense of what's motivating your work and your proposal. And then finally, what makes your approach different? It could be a unique methodology, an interdisciplinary approach, a novel population, for example. What sets your work apart from what's already been done? And then the approach section should really just offer a high-level overview of your research design. This is not an in-depth method section. You want to just briefly explain your methodology, whether it's qualitative or quantitative or mixed methods, and why it's appropriate, why that matches your study. You want to outline your data collection strategy. Are you going to conduct interviews, surveys, observations, or Kimberly, literature review? You want to be clear about how your plan to gather the data is going to answer the research questions. So back to the importance of having really solid research questions. And then finally, you want to touch on how you're going to handle the data analysis. Are you planning to use specific analytic tools, statistics, coding strategies? If you have that mapped out, you want to clearly articulate that here. And then under background, this is where you're going to provide a really brief bio, not your resume, not a full CV, just the very specific relevant information that will help the reviewers kind of get a sense of who you are, what experience or skills you possess, and you want them to believe that you can pull off the research that you're proposing. So you want to mention maybe previous projects or anything that's particularly relevant to show that you have the expertise that's needed and support your ability, their belief in your ability to execute this research successfully. So yes, thank you for going to the next slide. Perfect. So we're going to spend a few minutes here practicing. It's a quick, but I think really important exercise that's focused on the background and significance portion, because I chose that section because like I said, I think it's the core of your proposal, and it's where you're going to convince the reviewers of the value and the relevance of your research. So the goal of this exercise is to practice summarizing your research effectively for a general audience. And here's how it's going to work. I want each of you to take a few minutes to prepare a really concise 1-minute pitch covering background and significance of your project. And you're going to focus on 3 areas. One, you want to explain the importance of the problem, what you're addressing, why is it significant. You want to highlight the gap in existing knowledge, what's missing, why does it need to be filled or addressed or added to. And 3, you want to describe the potential impact of your research. How is this going to contribute to the field or have sort of broader societal implications? And feel free to use, ideas that you already developed either during the ideation exercise, things that you jotted down, or, maybe an idea that like just came to mind while I was talking, or don't get stuck trying to wordsmith it or make it, scholarly. I think right now this workshop is about getting just the ideas across, and then you'll have time to put it in the appropriate voice later on. Azia is on hand. She's going to help us get into breakout rooms. So I think that's going to be the best so that everybody gets a kind of a chance to brainstorm a little bit. And then I do want to say, I know we may not get to everyone, even in breakout rooms. So we are going to monitor the chat. So even after this workshop. So if you want to put any ideas, put them in the chat. I give you my word that I'll provide feedback over the next few days if we don't get to everybody. So with that, take a moment. And then meanwhile, Dr. Ghazi, I think we'll set up our breakout room.
Dr. Ghazi, are you ready for the breakout rooms? Would you like me to do it instead?
No, I'm ready.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
you
Just
know
making
what?
sure.
Dr. Ghazi actually she messaged me directly, which I think is a very good point. We've lost a couple of folks, and maybe we don't need the breakout room. Maybe we just stay as a group. Is everyone okay with that?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we're not a huge group, so it was hard to know when we were kind of designing this. So, do we have a volunteer, someone who wants to kind of share any thoughts that they have on background and significance at this point?
I'll volunteer,
Hey,
Liane,
Emma.
just
Hi,
because I
nice
like
to
you
meet you.
all. Congratulations to our newly minted doctors. Hoping to be part of your group someday. Okay,
Someday soon.
so this is the practice pitching. So my study is my research is to study the aspiration and occupational mobility of migrant domestic workers. The reason is because this is an understudied field. There is a lot of literature in the negative consequences of migrant domestic workers who lack legal rights because they are tied to sponsorship and are dependent on their employers. And then so the second is the gap in research is because I have not seen any research yet. Perhaps it's out there. I've not seen any research yet on migrant domestic workers who have successfully transitioned from domestic work to skilled work or were able to use their experience working abroad to enter into skilled or professional work. So to accomplish this, my research will interview a few migrant domestic workers from the Philippines. Why the Philippines? Because this is the leading exporting country for domestic migrant workers. And interview 15 of them for EIP. That will help, reveal some of the best practices or strategies that these domestic migrant workers use enable for them to transition out of domestic work and into professional careers. And then ideas you have developed during the ideation. Actually, while I was thinking about this, because I'm planning to travel to the Philippines. One of the reasons why I want to do that is I want to be able to make a change or impact, the training methods or the deployment methods or the sending out methods of the Department of Migrant Workers, so that the aspirational aspect or the occupational mobility of domestic migrant workers will be part of it. So while many are educated or many have, skills before becoming domestic workers, and very clearly they become domestic workers because this is the most available position for them to, to gain employment abroad and support their families financially. However, the idea of this being a short-term, a short-term duration versus like this is going to be their lifetime career, should be, maybe introduced in the beginning of the training so that they could develop a mindset of using their deployment more strategically.
So I mean, I know that this is your topic because we've discussed it before, and I think it's such an important one, Ama. Really wonderful work. Are you then thinking that you would use the Provost Grant, assuming that you're funded, to fund your dissertation research? Are you linking it to your dissertation, or is this?
Yes.
It is, yeah.
And also using the time while I was there, because my dissertation research does not require me to interview government officials, but I will also use it. And again, that would be my question after the presentation. Just to strike two birds with one stone, right? While I'm already there, use that opportunity to interview the heads, especially in their deployment training. And I think this is really interesting for me because there are many other countries, right? And the Philippines is in International Labor Organization. They actually use Filipino deployment system as a model system. However, it is lacking that empowerment, of domestic workers to transition out of domestic work and into professional careers.
So my only advice, because I think you have all of the elements of the exercise totally under control. My only advice is just to make sure that when you write the proposal, it's very clear what this grant will cover and what your deliverables will be, at the prescribed deadlines that Dr. Safa already went over, what you will turn in by when, and separate out the tasks in your mind, what falls under this grant and what doesn't.
Okay, so just real quickly, so when I apply for the grant, so if it will be a travel grant, should I just stick to the interviewing for the dissertation because that is the requirement of the dissertation?
I think that's up to you.
Okay.
It's really up to
I'll contact you guys later. Sorry, not to take my time.
Can I just add something here about that, Liane? Because Ama, you said something that may change a little bit your timeline, and you have to take it into consideration. You said that once you are there, you would like to take the opportunity to talk to, the heads and discuss about that. If that is something that is not in your IRB and approval, this would require more time for approval and do all this kind of stuff. So if you were planning to have like a variation of it, you can start thinking about that and applying for IRB in advance. So that when you are there, yeah, so when you are involving human subject, something that you all have to pay attention with your timeline is when is it that you are going to get your IRB approval. So I would recommend to start working on that as soon as possible, so you get it, already approve it, and you have 1 year too, before it expires.
And the IRB is good for 1 year?
Well, you can renew it. You will receive after 1 year the anniversary of it, and you can renew it or not. I'm not very, well versed with all
Okay.
the rules there, but you will receive and you can renew your project to more. It really depends on your timeline that you will include there, because you have to say to them, okay, I'm going to conduct this study from this month to that month, and it can be a longitudinal study, and then you can put in advance that it will be like 2 years. But 2 years
Okay.
is too long, and you won't be able to use your grant because it will end
Sure.
in August.
I got it. Okay, thank you so much.
Sure, welcome.
I'm keeping an eye on time, wondering if anyone else has an idea to share, or if you want to do it. You're welcome to do it, after this workshop has wrapped. But anyway, those are the main points that I wanted to go over. I think that they all make for a winning proposal. One thing I will say is, with the 3 to 5 pages, we're so used to including a lot of references and making, our papers for Pepperdine or our papers for publication very sort of reference dense. I would urge you not to do that with your grant proposal, because you're going to run out of space. So have them, to the side. Use the ones that are absolutely necessary, but just in the interest of space and time, I would keep it sparse. And that's it. I'm going to pass it on to Karin to take us through the nitty-gritty of the process.
Yes, home stretch. Give yourselves that extra, movement. So when I first looked at the timeline, and I'm going to cover timeline, budget, and mentor, which seems really obvious, but I think it's one of those areas that could catch you if you're not paying attention to it, because we're all so excited about our topics. We forget there's a whole other rhythm of business that happens at the university that grants fall into. So here, what I've illustrated is roughly, I had initially next to timeline the words ish. So your mileage may vary, but if you stick to this, you'll probably do really well. Too far in each direction in either of the semesters, and you might spill over into the next year, which you can't, or you might find yourself, unprepared at some other way. So we'll start with, and I'm not going to drain every single bullet. I broke this down into like the startup phase, like what we're doing right now. You're interested, and I commend especially those of you who are first year students that are here. That is so smart. I could not come up above water in my first semester. So kudos to you for paying attention, seeing that a workshop like this exists and that you're already in it. Getting your grant together, we had a conversation a little bit earlier. It doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to hold water, but it doesn't need to be perfect. Don't obsess over it. Just get it out and done. So that fall, right now that we're in, this is the part where Suelen has talked about IRB. Cannot overstate this. I was sweating bullets in December of the year that I did the first grant because I had not received IRB approval, and that was a survey. And I was like, it's just a survey. I've already told them the questions I'm asking. I'm not harming anybody. I'm not poking anybody. So what's the deal? But it was excellent practice for when later for my actual thesis, I was waiting for my IRB to come out and be approved. I was a lot calmer about it than I was with the Provost Grant research. So well begun, half done. That's the story in the startup phase. You can even begin starting your lit review. You can start even, designing your methodology, all that work that can be done. You don't want to wait till IRB is approved. In fact, when IRB is approved, you need to be ready. You need to press that button on LinkedIn or wherever it is, however it is you're securing your data. And if you get to winter and you need to have a plan, like how are you going to disseminate this information? Is it at a conference? Is it a book chapter? Is it an article in a journal? What is going to be done with this that might need funding? So that's really that winter. And you might even already be socializing and have results. For me, I was at a conference already in January presenting my findings. And then tail end of winter, I was putting together for the conference paperwork, my actual article. And by the time you get to spring, you're wrapping it up. You should make sure you had all the receipts, you've been ready, you have the ability to, show your budget, which is my next slide. And as we've all mentioned, a couple of dates to really note, we close out that year with the July 15 when funds are to be used, correct me if I'm wrong, Lina, and then progress report that you circle back with Savannah and you send her this, because the university wants to know, what did you do with this money? Did you actually bring it to fruition after you were awarded it? So it brings that cycle to a close. So next slide, please. And I talked about this in the tiny version. So next slide, please. There we go. All right. So when we talk about budget, the guidelines that went out in the email were really clear, but some things to think about, like conference registrations are important to get. Do try, you're still spending Pepperdine's money, so you want to be wise about how you spend it. The more, judicious you are about the early days that a conference is open for registration. If you can do that, do that. I will caution, if you don't get the Provost Grant and you've already spent all this money, go through it with it, but don't spend, if you can't afford it, ahead of the game. So always assume that you're still doing this scholarly work. It's still really good for your CV to, as Liane said, a grant granted puts you on that path of other grants that you'll get. However, choose wisely on, how you're spending on your registration, hotel, flight. Even if you're buying software tools, there's a lot of AI tools that makes our lives easier or harder, depending on how you look at it, that you might want to invest in. And, you can justify that in the budget section of your write-up, but they will want to see that and not estimates, really tight budget. Next slide, please. And then finally, I think really 50% of our grants are what we write and what's in our heart and what we want to scratch the surface on and add to the body of knowledge. But the other 50% is the partnership that you're developing with your faculty mentor. This is a person that you're going to see something in them that you're going to be learning from. You want to have, just as you would in any relationship, the right chemistry so you're not frustrated. Are they responsive in the way that your needs are? Are they a domain expert that will fill the gap of an area that you might have a blind spot or need more shoring up? Is this the kind of person that matches your learning style? Are you in classes with them and you're, in awe and, can't wait for their next word? This is the kind of assessment only you can do. We can only take you so far as, here's a person who knows STEM, or here's a person that studies the Holocaust. Then you have to decide for yourself, is this a person that will help me complete? And when I run into trouble, when I'm having an existential crisis and IRB hasn't been completed on Christmas Eve, is this the person that you want to go to? Oddly specific, but you get what I'm talking about. So, and that final point is your sense of urgency the same as theirs. So we get to know our professors through classes. Some of you are still early, so you only have 3 professors right now, but you can even early in your scholarly academic career start recognizing, wow, that's a person I want to continue learning from even beyond this class. So that's how I picked my mentor, and it was a really good fit for us. The second time around that I was more confident for my second grant, I chose a different faculty leader for his domain expertise in doing all sorts of quantitative and statistical analysis that I really wanted to show up professionally and not have the look and feel of a newbie that, is doing math camp. So that concludes my portion. I don't know if we still have time or enough people to do the practice, but I think we might want to pivot to seeing if anybody has any questions specific to the timeline, the costs and budget. And then being that I did risk for many, many years, I also put in the third bullet, like, is there a risk that you're going to get distracted? Is this the year you want to do this Provost Grant? Because it does take up a lot of time. You should assume that the little slot of December that we have, that is a break, is a lot of where you're going to focus your energies here. So if you have bandwidth, then it's a good time to add to your bandwidth an extra research study. If you're already tapped out with your classes and homework and readings, you might give yourself the grace and not, throw yourself into the deep end. So Liane, you have a question, thought, adding?
Just a thought to add. Yes, you're absolutely right about the risk and being, realistic about the time that you have available. But there's only a couple weeks between now and the deadline for submitting this 3 to 5 pager.
Mm-hmm.
You can change your mind, but you can't decide to submit for a provost grant after the deadline. You can change your mind about moving forward with whatever you submitted and, decide that you want to put it on hold and resubmit it next year, whatever. So if you think there's even a chance that you may want to do it, my suggestion, but then again, I didn't work in risk, so I'm probably terrible at risk assessment, but my suggestion is write a 3 to 5 pager, put it out there. Maybe you'll get funded. Maybe you'll have time to add it to, your to-do list. And if you don't, no one's going to hold that against you. Nobody, the next time round, if you resubmit for the same or a similar grant, nobody's going to say, oh, well, we funded her last time and she didn't, or he didn't do it. Like, that's not going to count against you. So, nothing ventured, nothing gained. That's my 2
Yeah,
cents.
exactly, Liane. Thank you so much and thank you, Karin. Well, I just wanted to add something about whether or not you will be accepted. Just don't get anxious on that. Don't let that fear feeling, whether or not am I going to be accepted or not, hold you back from submitting, because that's how you learn how to better submit maybe next year. So it's not like one shot or no other. Yeah, thank you. Zoe, do you have a question, please?
I do. Is there a template that you anyone on this team can provide us as far as budget? Because we could think that we're gonna have a certain cost, but you might have more experience in that to consider what those costs would be. Because if we're doing this proposal, how do I really know what that cost will be?
You have to estimate. You have to say roughly it's going to, let's use the conference. I'm going to do a research. I'm going to present it at a conference. You do some research. Flights are going to be about $500. Hotels are probably going to be $200. To go to the conference is probably $500 to register. I need a software, the Delve tool subscription. I'll need it for 3 months. So you add all those things up. Now, one thing I didn't mention, but it's totally important to call out is you might get partial funding. So you might get accepted and only receive $1,000, whereas the whole endeavor might cost $3,000 for you. Then you have a decision to make whether you want to see it through or not. That's an important call out as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I would also you said it in another way, Karin. So itemized budget. Make sure you itemize the budget. The more detailed you are, the higher chances you have to get approved. Suelen, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add that, if I were you, I wouldn't seek for a template because your research is kind of unique and you will decide what is it that you are going to use. So I would definitely do what Karin said, like have a conversation with your faculty sponsor, your mentor, but also what you can do as a guideline, not a template, is look for look for other proposals that use qualitative, analysis, phenomenology. What is it that they include and this kind of thing? This will help you to have an idea of everything that they tend to include as an example, but don't use a template. And try to be very specific about everything. So it can be, for example, if you are recruiting people using LinkedIn, maybe your subscription, a premium subscription of LinkedIn can be included that because it allows you to contact more people, to do some types of research that you would not be able to do using, a basic account, this kind of thing. Try to think a little bit about possible expenses that you have. And there is one thing that I would say, try to be the more detailed as possible, but some things might happen because something now that would change. Maybe you find, you are planning to use a specific software and then you find out another software that was better. We did that in our project. We reached out to Katie Care and we said, hey, this is the thing. We planned this one, but we found this other one that is better, blah, 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 blah. And there was a small difference in the amount of money. And she said, you can do, as long as you don't go over the fund that you had, you can do that. So it gives you a little bit of peace of mind that you have these, as long as you have, a reason for doing that during your process. Does that make sense? I hope that helps.
Exactly, Suelen. I think that's a really good advice. It's what Dr. Colados gave me the example of, what you want to say is, I'm going to Disneyland and I'm planning to take the 405 and this is why. But when you're on the freeway, if it looks like the 91 is better, like, you have agency and you can make that decision, and then you have to give rationale.
Okay, so in putting it together, I would say just a few things that we've all talked about. It's nice to be, now I'll talk about my own a little bit. It's nice to be peripherally near the topic that is of interest to you at the overarching level. I don't recommend, and my peers might say otherwise, but I don't recommend you go finding a really wild different topic that is not going to accrue to something bigger later in your scholarly career. I think this is such an important moment for people to see your name in bright lights, to see what you're about, what you're known for. I think all three of us here who are fellows this year, like, people look at us and they know that's the STEM gal. They know that's the trust person. They know that's the polarization and civil conversations person. So it's part of your brand as well as a scholar that you can be deeply associated with. So don't forget that too. There's so many things we all want to do. And I believe some of you have already spoken up, already are anchored to what it is that you're eventually going to write your thesis about. But it's a really great opportunity also to get familiar with the literature that's out there so that when you are doing the real deal, it's not so daunting. Like, oh, I've seen that study before. Okay, that's all I had. If there are no
Okay, well,
questions.
any questions or final thoughts, or anyone did have a question and we did not have the chance to ask or to talk about it, to express any final thought before we conclude this workshop? Well, I think, and anyway, we are going to share the recording for this session afterwards with everyone who registered, for sure, for this session, at least for everyone who registered. And this is going to be specifically useful on the practice part, the exercises that the facilitators shared with us. Because, given time constraints, maybe you didn't have time to thoroughly reflect on their questions. They are deep dive questions. Yeah, Zoe, you have a question. You have your hand up, please.
Yes. Yeah. Are you going to share the PowerPoints? Because this is so small. I couldn't see what's on those slides.
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
For sure, the recording and the PowerPoint, for sure. Yeah. Ama?
Yeah, so just to be clear, your recommendation is to have one project for the grant. So if I'm doing travel for dissertation, just stick to that. But if you are, for example, doing this, but you are also presenting at a conference, don't combine them. Just do one project per grant, right?
I wouldn't say that. I
No,
think
and
that,
I meant, and not, I didn't mean that you said that, but I was just clarifying
yeah,
that in my head.
I just my recommendation, I'm not speaking on behalf of the whole group, is just to be very clear what the grant will and will not cover, like what are the parameters of the grant. And just as a reminder, Suelen's point about IRB is really an important one to keep in mind. So
Yes.
yeah.
IRB will make you cry. I'm sorry, was that recorded?
I had a much less terrible
Traumatic.
experience. It
Yes,
was
yes.
not traumatic,
You had
not
other data.
scared. So
One quick thing about what Ama, I just want to make sure before you start talking to people, when you get there, that you have passed IRB, because you cannot have conversations with anybody that's going to be included in your research. Okay.
I promise I have not. I have attended Dr. Majidi's class. I'm very clear on, yes, I'm submitting by chapter 3.
Yeah. So just a last recommendation, you can put both in your timeline. You can put those both in your budget. We did that in our first. We submitted in December. The timelines were different in the first year. We started right after to work on our IRB. We got approved in January. We interviewed people in February.
Right.
So we got everything done. And then we participated in conference in June, and we put everything in our budget and we executed that. So this is a possibility. It's hard. IRB is hard, but it's possible. And yeah, there are some projects that they will take longer, but some of them, as Lina said, she approved hers in like 2 days. So yeah, believe it's really
Right.
possible. You can do
Because
that.
the IRB is to interview the subjects, right? So that is like it's restricted. So you're traveling to do that. But then thank you for confirming. If I am presenting at a conference at a later time with an approved IRB, then you can have 2 travels in the same grant for the same research.
Yeah.
Kimberly, you had a question as well, please.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you very much, ladies, for your comprehensive, your pearls of wisdom, and even thinking about the feasibility of doing this, the practicality of how to complete the form, being specific and everything. But I look forward to reaching out, and I think you're right. I'm not going to just assume that I can't do this. I'm going to aspire to do this. So I'll be reaching out. Thank you so much.
Sure. Well, with that, really, that was truly inspiring to me as well. With my colleagues, with the inspiration that I get from my colleagues, from the 3 scholars, amazing scholars. Thank you all for attending today's workshop on how to apply to the Provost Grant. I hope you now feel more prepared, confident, and inspired to take the next steps towards successfully applying for this grant. And I would like also to please remember, this is not just about securing funding, but also about advancing meaningful research and making a lasting impact in our community through academic work. So always I always remember that. And as you begin working on your applications, I highly encourage you to start early, stay organized, and reach out for guidance if needed. We're here to support always, to support you throughout the process. Don't hesitate to connect with faculty mentors or our grants office for additional resources and advice. Collaboration really and persistence are key. And with your dedication and a strong proposal, I'm confident we will see many of you successfully awarded the Provost Grant. A special thank you to our 3 scholar facilitators today for sharing their expertise and invaluable advice today. and for putting all this, wonderful work together. We are truly grateful for their contributions to making this workshop a success. And thank you also to Dr. Ghazi so much. Thank you for your continuous support. You always have our back. Thank you for that. We appreciate you. We wanted to thank Dr. Samahaniya and Dr. Jennifer Miyakitra, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation. Thank you again for your time and engagement today, and we look forward to seeing your ideas come to life and making a positive contribution to your field of study, and wishing you all the very best of luck.